All right. Hello, everyone. Sorry. Yeah, so I apologize for the delayed posting of my videos. Yeah, because I caught a cold, very bad cold last week. So it was fortunately not a COVID-19, not a positive case of the COVID-19, but it impacted a lot of my schedule. So I delayed many of the works. So I'm so sorry about that. So I will wrap up because this is the last week of the summer semester. Sorry. Mm-mm-mm. So as you saw in my email, I posted the lecture slide in advance so that you can start studying on the next chapters. But the final exam that will be tentatively, but most likely to be scheduled from June 30th, the end of the June, and by the July 1st. So you will have 48 hours as you had the last time for the midterm exam, but the format will be a little bit that will be very similar, but the format will be a little bit different. So I will post a very detailed instruction about the final exam very soon. But in between, I will post the lecture slide. Oh, sorry about that. I already posted them. So I will post my recorded lectures for the topic 11, the health, and the topic 12, the recent issues of the population. All right. So sorry. So because of my bad throat condition and the voice condition, I may not be able to record a very long video today, but I will try my best to pick up which part are very important for the weekly quiz, which is due on June 30th, I think. I remember, I'm sure, and I will pick up which parts are very important for the weekly quiz and the final exam. All right, so let's go. So the migration, if you recall, there were three very important elements of the population growth. So the first one is the birth, and the second one is the death, and the third one is the migration. So the difference between the birth and the death is indicated as a natural increase and a net migration, and these are combined as the population growth or population decline based on the number. So if these are positive number, I mean the natural increase plus the net migration is bigger than zero, it means that there was a population increase in that specific year in the population clock. Or in opposite way, if the combination, if the sum of the natural increase and the net migration is the negative number, it means there was a decline of the population in the specific population. So the migration is very big part of the population phenomena. So any part of the population dynamics. All right, so let's go to the next slide. All right, so the final exam. So in the final exam, you will have an opportunity. You will have other opportunity to look through the details of the data. So the hour wording data, this is very useful one. And I will embed or I will add a link to go to this website. So I'm thinking about the format of which will be the online submission or on the submitting the online file or something. But some of the data of this website will be utilized for your final exam or the remainder of the assignments in case if there are additional in-class activities. So the migration, that's moving the space, the residential space. So the traveling is not considered as the migration because this is not very long term on the travel or long term the relocation of something. But the migration is it could be the short term or in most cases very long term the relocation of the residential area. So it's very big transition of the people general, for the not only for the individual, that's very important, but also in general trends for the country or the society, the migration is very, very important. So where did we come from? So as I introduced in the beginning of the semester, I mentioned that I came from South Korea 12 years ago for my PhD degree. And after finishing my PhD degree at the University of Maryland at the College Park, I was hired as a professor at the Gettysburg College. So we moved to Gettysburg in Pennsylvania. And then I moved to the Arkansas in Jonesboro this year for my new job in this university. So I could that was why I could meet you in this semester. Anyway, so the globalization and urbanization. So my migration history is based on my choice and others. But in case we were born 100 years ago or something, we may not be able to move or migrate very easily because of the transportation and the globalization. For example, about 50 years ago, in South Korea or other countries, the international travels were very, very limited for the specific people. So for the CEOs who need to do the business travel, or the diplomats who need to do their official processes of the policy, but individual level world travel, so these were very, very limited. However, in these days, if we have money or time, we may not have very big limitations in the travel, as long as we are very healthy or we don't have any specific issues with the entry or re-entry of the countries. So the local migration means you are migrating within the country or within the specific region of the area. But international or the global migration is, as I did about 12 years ago from South Korea and went to went to the Maryland for my study for the career. So the local and the global migration, these are very active components of the migration. So in definition, in the very formal definition of the migration, we say that the change in the population membership. So I lived in South Korea, the Seoul, the national capital city of the South Korea, and moved to Maryland, the College Park, for my degree. So I changed the membership. So even though I didn't change my the country of citizenship, but anyway, in terms of the residential information, there was relevant with my address as a temporary address in the United States, and change the residence again. This is very similar meaning of that. So permanent or the semi-permanent change in the residence, or the cross some administrative boundary or the country boundary in migration area, and occur during a given period of time. So these three elements are very important part of the migration. So again, it says migration is change in the residence across some geopolitical boundary in a given period of time. So that is the meaning or definition of the migration. So in most cases, the process is not only very, very positively selective, but also very negative selective, which means very highly qualified people, they could be selected for the migration, but also the manual workers and who are I think this is not very good description, but who are purchaseable. I mean, who'd have very low wages in the manual working or very big on the huge construction site or something. There are very big needs of the migration. So it will be very selective, but in many means, in many meanings of the selective needs. So there are very selective process of the migration. It means that it could be the very the talent selective or the physical power selective or others, but anyway, the migration is very selective because in general, it's very hard to move your residential site or your country of the membership, because living in your country or living in your local area would be very, very easy and very, very easy landing and smooth landing. And for example, if you come back, so as long as if you like your hometown, so after finishing your degree and coming back to your hometown, that will be a very, very easy landing. Anyway, so at least living living in the state you were born, or living in the state when you spend a long time, or at least living in your own home country, they will be not super. So the least challenging, I mean, no, sorry about that. So not the least challenging, but that would be not very challenging compared with the moving to other country or other city or something. So the dynamics and the migration will always impact the resident country and others. So that's why this is very selective, but this is not only impacting on the departing area or the destination area. So heavily relied on the official statistics from the data source, because usually in the United States, the entry and re-entries, these are recorded on the I-94 or other records. But other than that, some other countries without a very qualified the official statistics, it's almost impossible to get the information about the migration. So mostly these are the resources of the data, and these are very, very qualified, and usually and many times these are very expensive data because without the qualifications of the data collecting bodies, it's almost impossible to get the information. So again, on the reviewing the very earlier part of the contents, the P2 minus P1 is the difference between the people difference of population between time point 2 and time point 1. Usually time point 2 is the later time, and time point 2 is the earlier time. And the birth between the period, the time point 1 and 2, and the deaths and the time point 1 and 2, and the difference between the births and the deaths. So that will be the natural increase. Number of births minus number of deaths will be natural increase in case this is the positive number, and the natural decrease in case this is the negative number. And because the border is open and the migration, the net migration is the difference between the number of in-migration of that area in the specific time minus number of out-migration in the specific point of time in that area. So again, very, very logically, if that sum is bigger than 0, population increase. If that number is negative number, that's the population decline. So for example, this is a little bit. So if we on the first shot, it might be very challenging to see the relationship. But anyway, the area 1, in area 1, so there was 1,000 people in area 1, but there was the out migration with the 50 people out of 1,000. And then simultaneously in that year, 100 people came to that area. All right, so 50 people came out, and then 100 people came in. So they are not the same people. So it means that the 50 people came out of out to the area B. They didn't come back to area A. So net migration over the area A is the in migration 100 minus the out migration the 50. So that's why the positive 50 is the net migration. In the area B, so in migration was 50, and then the out migration was 100. So 50 minus 100 is the negative 50. So that was why the net migration of area A was 50 and area B was negative 50. All right, very simple, right? Okay. So again, the net migration is the population growth minus macro increase of growth. So as long as you know about that, so the population growth or in population increase or decline, it could be in both of the ways. Either one is natural increase plus the net migration. So again, in very easy calculation, the net migration is the population increase or decrease or population growth minus the natural increase. So if you just use that characteristic, you can try to calculate the number. For example, so this is information. Maybe you can review it later within the lecture slide. And I just made the squeeze this one. So North America. Maybe you can use those numbers, but anyway, the B minus D, the births minus deaths, is 1,530. So I think this is the part 1,000, right? In 1,000, but let's say 8,530,000. All right, so the b minus 2 is the natural increase. So the b on the 23015 minus 14485 is 8,530,000. So b minus d is the b minus d, natural increase. And natural increase, so natural increase plus the net migration is the total growth, right? So natural increase 8,530, the net migration 6,000 on the 97,000, right, is 14,627,000. So that will be the bigger one, but let's in thousand. Let's put in the number. So in this way, you can calculate the numbers in here. So again, just in case, so I usually mark this one. So I didn't include it on the weekly quiz. So this is very highly likely to be included in the final exam. So in case I make the blank, if we have the full information like that, you can try to calculate the number. For example, the natural increase plus, so natural increase plus the net migration is total growth. So the net migration is, 2,000 something, which is the total growth and then the population growth, plus because it's coming out on the left hand side to the right hand side. So this is the sign is changed and 3,080. So the 8,895. So in thousand, but let's omit that. So that is the sorry about that. That is on the net migration. And let's check that. And right, right, the 8,895. So that's the correct answer. All right. So this is the beauty of watching the lecture video. All right. So the others are very the minor information. So maybe you can read over my lecture slide and the video. And so there are the forces then. So the pre-modern area, and these were the main pathways of the migration. So as a common sense in the history, you learn that in the European countries to the North America and Latin European countries to the Central to the South America. Did I say Africa? No, sorry about that. North Europe to the North America, Europe to the North America or the Central America, and the third one is for the slavery and the trade of the some of the bad, not very good history of the time. On the three those types of the Great Britain to the African Australia, the African slavery system to the North America and the Central and the South America, China and India abroad to the other area. They came to the United States as well for the construction of the railroad on the west side of the United States, American westward and the southward expansion for the Golden Rush, and the Russian eastward and the north expansion of the communism on the expansion. So you can read over that these are the lists of the pre-modern, and maybe differentiating the routes or the routes of the pre-modern migration and the modern migration would be a very good question in the quiz. So again, on the Europe to the United States, and from so many countries, they are coming to the North America, especially to the United States, and European migration in America, the Oceania, and many of the countries, not only to the Central or the European countries to the United States or the America, but many other pathways. So there are very diverse ways of the pathways of the migration in the modern area. But a very new type of the migration is the forced migration, the war situation, and the modern migration, the human trafficking. And this is the one. So the human trafficking is a kind of the very modern. So it will not happen in the pre-modern. So human trafficking was happened in the slavery system. But in one case, all kind of the human trafficking This is the victims of the detected major deaths in regions. So a very new types of the human trafficking is based on the new ways of the slavery, or the new ways of the sexual slavery, or the victims. So these are happening. The human trafficking is happening as the modern types of the migration, instead of the pre-modern type of migration. So on the interregional migration in the United States, so to the east coast or to the west coast of the gold rush. So these are the history things that you might learn a lot in the history classes. So let me move to the other parts. So the net domestic and the from abroad, if you add them up, you can find these numbers and the numbers. So net domestic and the from abroad, maybe you can find the other numbers. And the Asian migration. So this is net domestic. So will happen in the domestic within the region, and the from abroad. It means that outside of the northeast. So maybe you can find some more on the findings in those numbers. So this is what we say on the population echo, because some of the people under some age, under age of the 10 or thing. So there is the very big, very similar types of the valley you can see, because this is what we say the age selective migration. And if the parents, the age of the parents, such as 25 through 30, 30 through 34, 35 something, and their children come together usually in most cases. So that's why we can see the echo of the population changes. So determinants of the migration, you can very easily imagine if the destination, if there are the very attractive destination, so there will be the high levels of the volume of the input of that people in that area. So degree of the diversity and the diversity of the people, different surmounting the intervening obstacles, fluctuations in economy, and there are many conditions. So this is the one theory we can see in the E.S. Lee's model of the voluntary migration, not the forced migration. So there are the fluctuations of the obstacles. So for example, the economy situation, or on the closing the border, or the opening the border, or the changes in the policy, there are many types of the fluctuations of the obstacles. Sometimes very high, sometimes very low relatively, and the origin, on the area of the origin and the area of the destination, like a magnetic. So there are the magnetics and the positive sign and the negative sign, and other conditions. And there are sometimes attracting, and sometimes the drawing, and sometimes the repelling. So based on the situation, we can see some of the very physical. This is more closer to the physics instead of the population. But based on the powers, the combining power of the repelling the immigrants and the attracting migrants, and these are determined and intermediated by the intervening obstacles. So it's very difficult to calculate and to equate on the numbers of the migration, or trends of migration. But anyway, there are very complex dynamics in the population on the migration. And I would recommend you to very carefully read on those websites, on those pages. The more theories in the page 351 through 353. So there are the theories that you can use, or you can refer as the theoretical background of the migration. So please make sure to read them over, and make sure to prepare to in the final exam. All right. So particular country intervening policy, either raise or lower migration more and more. So based on the country, more developed the country and others, there are raise more, but there are lower levels of the interventions. All right, so impacts of the migration, the population size, because if there are more in migration, the destination area will be bigger and bigger, because there are many inflows of the influx of the population. But in opposite way, if there are so many out migrating people, that area will be getting smaller and smaller. So this is a very sensitive issue actually. So immigration policy in the United States. So the United States is the #1 destination country, and there are many many of the administrative steps of the sometimes permanent residency, the green card, the H-1B, or the temporary visa for the special occupation. So immigration policy on these so very naturally these are determined based on the needs of the accepting country. I mean the destination country. So this is the very basic history and something very welcoming, because in the very early era of the United States history, because of the very, compared with the high volume, I mean a very huge size of the land of the United States and North America, there were relatively smaller number of people. So the very general criteria of the immigration policy was welcoming the immigrants. But there were the first restriction is the qualitative restriction, and the next one the quantitative restrictions, and then there was this kind of loosen restriction because of the family reunion, and labor needs because of the expansion of the economy. But after then, because of the financial crisis and many of the security issues after the 9/11 or September 11, there were very mixed ones. Sometimes it's looser, it's like a smoother or the wider or more open, but sometimes these are very restrictive based on the political situation, and like the natural disasters such as the COVID-19. So we cannot say we had, or in the United States had very consistent levels of the immigration policy, but there were very different types of that. So as we read, as we saw in the previous theory on the intervening obstacles, so there were very different levels of the obstacles of the migration as the immigrants to the United States. Alright, the immigration to the United States, these are the general trends, and maybe you can read over. But you can see that, industrialization period time, there were more needs of the people in the United States. And immigration posed because there were more people, and there was because of the World War II, there was closure of the border, but there were the post the World War II of migration. So there were the increasing the levels of the migration, and if you add up the time span, maybe you can see the very high fluctuations more and more. All right, so for the not for the weekly quiz, but for the final exam, I'd recommend you to read over this part very carefully. So this is the residence of the March 2011. So it means that this is the residence of the origin, and this is the residence of the destination. So those who lived in Northwest, those who lived in the Midwest in 2011, but 53,000 people moved from Midwest to the Northeast. So after reading the table and the numbers, these and the rows are information in the 2011, and the column these are the residents of the March 20 and 2012. So those who lived in the Midwest in 2011, and they moved to the Northeast by the 2012, by that March 2012, as 53,000. So the Midwest lost 53,000, and Northeast, but in contrast, they gained and they earned and they had additional 53,000 people, because 53,000 people moved from Midwest to the Northeast. So from south of the United States, 178,000 people moved to the Northeast. From the West, 43 people moved to the Northeast. Alright, so Northeast. So adding up the 53, 178, 43, there was this amount of the people moved from other area to the Northeast. However, those who lived in 2011, those who lived in the Northeast in 2011, they moved out to the Midwest, South, west. So after adding them up, maybe you can find the out migration, some of the out migration. So in terms of so for the northeast, so this number 53 plus 178 plus 43, this is the in-migration to the northeast. And then 52 plus 362 plus 184, the sum of these number is the out-migration. So you can calculate the numbers of the migration, in-migration, and the changes and fluctuation based on this table. So volume of the gross migration between south and the northeast, maybe you can calculate. Okay? For the south, from the south, there was the 178 people from the south to northeast, and from northeast to the south, 540 to the 540,000 from the northeast to the south. Okay, so then in that case, sorry about that, 362,000 from the northeast to the south. So the volume of the gross migration is this number from south to northeast, and this number from the northeast to the south. The net migration for the northeast to south was, it could be calculated in this way. So 362,000 from northeast to the south. This is the out migration for the northeast, or for the south, that was more number. And 178,000, this is from the south to the northeast, right? So this is the net migration from the northeast to the south is 184,000 people. So this is it looks very tricky, but you can try to match the number and try to calculate the number based on the logical the processes of the adding up and on the subtracting them up down based on the from the residence of origin and the residence of the destination. And it might be easier. So in 2015, the population of the area A will be, so there was 1,000 male in area A and 2,000 male in area B. So migration from A to B was 300, and this is out migration from A to B, and this is in migration. So for the A, 100 people came from B to A. So from 1,000, there were 300 of the out migration from A to B, and there was 100 in migration from B to A. So 1,000 minus 300 plus 100 is 800. So in 2015, there were 800,000 people. The male and 800,000 men in area A. For the female, so it started at 1,000. So there was out migration at 100, and there was in migration from B to A. So because we are talking about the migration based on the perspective A. So from 1,000 minus 100 plus 300 is 102,000. So sex ratio, you might remember that, so number of male divided by number of female, so close the parenthesis, multiply 100. So this is a 66.67, which means that this is the number of the male per 100 female. So we can say that there are 66.67. Usually round up because we cannot find it 0.67 people. So around 67 male per 100 females in area A in 2015. All right. So that's it for the migration, and please make sure to read over what I emphasized today, and make sure to prepare them for the final exam and for the weekly quiz as the last quiz of the semester. All right, thank you very much, and see you in the next video.